Everyone, welcome back from the break. In the first part of this session, we discussed the impact of the COVID-19 on startups, investment, and industrial environments with particular emphasis on the Americas. In this part of the session, European and Korean experts shall be sharing their experience and expertise. Dr. Park shall once more guide us through this session, and she will be joined by Dr. Park from ETRI and Mr. Ryu from the Korean Science and Tech Holdings. Please join me in welcoming them with a round of applause. Dr. Park, please.
Yes. 안녕하세요. 오늘 오전에 두 번째 세션은 한국어로 이제 진행을 할 건데요. 이번 세션은 우리나라에서 액셀러레이터 투자 환경의 변화, 그리고 또 유럽에서는 어떤 변화가 있는지를 중심으로 알아볼 예정입니다. 첫 번째 세션과 비슷하게 두 번째 세션에서도 세 나라가 참여를 할 예정인데요. 한국에서의 투자 환경을 말씀해 주실 연사들과, 그리고 룩셈부르크에서는 어떤 투자 환경이신지, 어떤 지금 코비드 19에 대한 대응이 이루어지고 있는지, 그리고 마지막으로 온라인에서 지금 참여를 해주시는 핀란드 전문가께서 핀란드 상황에 대해서 공유를 해주실 겁니다. 그래서 아까와 비슷하게 한국의 상황이 공유가 되면 한국의 상황의 공유 후에 여기 계신 토론자들께서 질문을 해주실 거고요. 그리고 나서 룩셈부르크 발표가 이어질 거고, 또 토론, 그리고 마지막으로 핀란드 쪽에서 발표를 하고 토론을 하는 식으로 하겠습니다. 이번에는 좀 아까보다는 스피커가 한 명 줄어들어서요. 다행히 플로어 쪽으로 저희가 Q&A를 할 수 있는 그런 기회가 있을 것 같습니다. 그러면 첫 번째 연사이신 미래과학기술지주의 김판건 대표님을 모시겠습니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 네, 보이진 않지만 많은 분들이 있을 걸로 생각을 하고 시작을 하겠습니다. 15분 정도 말씀을 드리고 5분 정도 Q&A 하는 시간을 가지겠습니다. 제가 오늘 말씀드릴 내용은 이게 코비드 19 때문에 전 세계적으로 지금 팬데믹이 왔잖아요. 이런 팬데믹 상황 속에서 전 세계적인 벤처 펀딩은 어떻게 진행이 되어 왔고, 팬데믹이 벤처 펀딩에 어떤 임팩트를 줘왔는지 좀 말씀드려 보려고 합니다. 좀 세계적인 거 먼저 살펴보고요. 두 번째, 한국의 상황들을 좀 살펴보겠습니다. 저는 미래과학기술지주 대표고, 미래홀딩닷컴에 들어오시면 미래과학기술지주의 투자 상황들을 지켜볼 수 있을 겁니다. 농사를 짓는 거나 스타트업을 키우는 거나 굉장히 유사하다고 생각하고 있습니다. 먼저 항상 들어가기 전에 제가 이런 발표를 하는 주 요인은 미래과학기술지주 광고를 하기 위해서인데요. 한 1, 2분 정도 광고하고 지나가겠습니다. 미래과학기술지주는 한국에 4대 과기원이 있는데 카이스트, 유니스트, 지스트, 디지스트라는 학교가 설립해서 만든 홀딩 컴퍼니입니다. 과기정통부 산하 기관이고요. 저희는 학교에 있는 기술을 바탕으로 교수님과 학생들, 기술 기반의 외부의 스타트업의 창업을 지원하고 직접 투자를 하고 있습니다. 현재 저희의 주로 투자하는 포인트는 한 대충 마이크로 VC라고 생각하시면 될 것 같아요. 인큐베이터기도 하고 엑셀레이터기도 하고 마이크로 VC의 역할을 하고 있습니다. 현재 포트폴리오는 한 60개 정도 투자를 했고요. 인셉션 단계부터 저희가 투자를 해나가고 있습니다. 투자 단계는 시드, 그 다음에 시리즈 A까지, 시드부터 시작을 해서 시리즈 A까지 주로 투자를 하고 있습니다. 저희는 항상 열정을 가지고 있고 스타트업 한번 해보겠다는
we are always looking for passionate startups. We are, looking at finding good entrepreneurs so that we can make good investment. Once we make an investment, we provide support in 3 areas. So we help them to find business partners. Also, we give financial support, and also we review the exit policies for the company. So we are a micro VC. So briefly, I talked about the company that I work for, and then I'd like to move on to the global venture funding situation. And secondly, Korea funding situations will be talked about. So up until the second quarter of 2020, as you see here, there were many concerns about the pandemic. So in the first quarter, and the Q1 and Q2 were the period where people raised serious concerns about the pandemic. But in fact, the investment did not reduce that much. So this is, please look at the part highlighted in the reddish color. So compared to the first half of the last year, the first half this year didn't see a much decrease in the investment. So there are different stages of funding, like angel seed stage and early stage and late stage, and the last stage is the technology growth. This is something called PF. So Q1 and Q2, first quarter and the second quarter of the 2020, so mostly didn't see a decrease in investment amount, but most of the reductions happened in early stage funding. So I'd like to make a little bit of breakdown. So the global seed and then angel investment, and these are the parts where we see a bigger increase than the other areas. So the second quarter of 2020, when you look at the numbers and figures, and the numbers and figures were halved compared to the second quarter of last year. So it used to be like $3.7 billion US dollars, but in the second quarter of this year, it became $2.3 billion US dollars. As you know, most of the companies they look for more profit and more money, and the investment in companies did not rebound immediately. And recently, SoftBank situation, or its CEO, the Son Jung-hee's option investment, and the other scandals led to a decrease in stock prices. However, the stock market was not as much contracted as concerned. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, especially the investment is getting halved in the angel stage funding. But when it comes to the late stage investment, the investment amount did not decrease that much. So unicorn companies like Uber, and they need definitely more money. And in case of Uber, they saw a lot of loss, but instead they are shifting their directions to Uber Eats. And among unicorn companies, and 80 companies received the investment, which is more than $500 million US dollars. And Tokopedia of Indonesia, for example, they did receive a lot of investment. Qingzhu and Didi Chungshin of China, they are the companies of offering car sharing services. So they are the examples of companies that received much funding. So in this promising area, they definitely did not lose investment opportunities. But in terms of the technological investment, technological growth, actually there were more investment made than expected. Actually, we have just 2 minutes left, and could you please wrap up your presentation within 3 minutes? I heard that 15 minutes will be given to me. I didn't expect that the time would be so short, so I will do my best to be on time. Global acquisition has lessened a lot, and the founders and the VCs, so we made a survey about those the founders and the VCs, and actually the venture capitalists and how they are concerned about the COVID-19. So this is the data that you can refer to, and still in the United States, funding is maintained at a strong level. Then let's take a look at the impact by the pandemic. For technical startups, many layoffs took place, and they are facing many difficulties because of the pandemic. And for the venture capitalists, the COVID-19 gave them a reset opportunity. However, that reset opportunity is not that dramatic. And the early stage valuations dropped by 20 and 30%. In the long term, 40% reduction is expected. So this is about fundraising in Korea in 2019. In 2019, we saw a continuous increase in funding, and this is about investment by venture capitalists. From 2015 up until 2019, through the assistance program of the government, we saw a big increase in investment by venture capitalist fund. And most of the investments were made to the early stage thanks to the policy of the government. And these are the investment categories. So let's take a look at by sector. Look at it by sector. So materials, equipment, and parts is the promising area, which is seeing an increase in investment, and also in biotech as well. So diagnostics kits are popular, so that's why there is an increasing investment in bio. And it seems that the Korean companies are enhancing their competitive advantages in the global market. And this is about exit. Most of the companies in Korea, they do exit by IPO. And what is particular is that the exit policy by M&A is much less in Korea. But the U.S. is opposite. Actually, the M&A accounts for much portion in the United States. And in the second half of this year, we noticed that there is a little bit of reduction in fundraising. And when we take a look at the numbers of fundraising, or cases of fundraising compared against the 2019, there is a reduction. This indicates that investment is being made continuously. However, the combined fundraising, the number of cases, such cases, is on the decrease. So bioindustry and chemicals and the materials are seeing an increase. Actually, there is a mistake in marking the industries. I think that the square box needs to be one line a bit higher. So I did my best to, be online. I skipped a major part of the presentations, but if you have any questions, please let me know that. Thank you for being on time. So we'd like to move on to the second speaker. I'd like to invite speaker Hee-Yoon Lee from Spark Lab. So the speaker will be talking about the changes in the investment environment. There is no speaker from Spark Lab?
Hello. Do you hear me? Yes, I can hear you very well. So I know that the file is not being shared right now. Where would you please show your presentation? Because Spark Lab material should be on the slide. Well, I know that the President Kim Pan-gun mentioned about the venture capital in the COVID-19 crisis. So I hope that you could actually add more information regarding the VC. So please start. Well, so is the slide ready? Yes, yes. Yes, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to meet you. Well, you know that the topic of this session is about the changes in the investment environment, especially in the COVID-19 crisis. So I'd like to focus more on the Korean situation and specifically the impact on the initial stage of this COVID-19. Well, first of all, this slide shows the snapshot of South Korea. These are the bullet points that people need to pay attention to. This is a very much familiar information to most of you because we really have the highest smartphone penetration in the world, and we also have the launch of the commercial 5G service. Again, it's the first time in the world. Well, some people think that Korea is relatively has a very small landmass. However, we have a top ranking, and we are number 5 in terms of the e-commerce market. We're also number 7 in terms of the personal luxury good market. And this gives a very bright light to some of the market. We are still now under the COVID-19 crisis, and then the activities and the programs that Korea is providing draw a keen attention from the people around the world. Well, of course, at first we had a very high incidence rate, but we could very swiftly and effectively responded to this incident. Well, that is partly because of the well-established and very robust IT infrastructure that we have accumulated so far. And even the ISO selected the Korea's COVID-19 response model as the international standard for infectious diseases. And in terms of the test kit, we are number 2. Especially in the export perspective. So, of course, we did our best to better respond to the situation, but of course, this also gave some impact to the investment market. In the first half, we have about a 19% reduction in the investment. So, of course, if you take a look at in detail by each segment, like a first quarter and second quarter, we had a slight increase in the first quarter. However, we see the realization of the COVID-19 impact, so we see a small increase in the second half. I would say that the first half investment was here, and I believe that the implication is actually, the consequences will be reflected more in the second half, because we actually avoided the person-to-person or in-person on the context, and it was extremely difficult to identify the further cases. So this demonstrates the negative impact of the COVID-19. This shows the number of the new investments, as you can see from this bar graph. Of course, the total sum of the investment went down slightly. I would say that it's about minus 4.7%. But however, in terms of the number of the companies which got the investment, got also witnessed the decrease in about the 7.8%. So I think this is a very sad news, because we also see the less number of the companies which got the investment, and at the same time we also got the less number of the new investment. So I know that overall we saw the decrease. I know that this was also highlighted in the previous presentation. I'd like to talk a little bit about the startup, especially the impact that they got from the COVID-19, and the data sales in the first quarter went down, and they also had the project delay and also setback in launching. So overall, I think the capital by the small and medium-sized companies or the startup is really shrinking. So this actually gave some negative impact to the runway of the startup companies. So we tried to make some effort. I'd like to talk about the activities or the support activities by the Korea's Ministry of Small and Medium-sized, the SME and the startups. So they tried to help out these startups. 3 more minutes, please. Go ahead. So I like to introduce the kind of response that we do from our perspective. First of all, startup, our company, the Start Labs, is a leader in Asia Tech ecosystem, and this was founded in 2012. So these are the co-founders, and where you mentioned that we normally make a very active investment in initial stage. So we sometimes, use IPO as well as the M&A for the exit. What would be the role of the accelerator? Well, first of all, we have angel investors as well as venture capitalists. So we need to accelerate their investments so that we can actually see the fast-moving activities. And again, we are under a very, very uncertain situation because of the COVID-19, where, of course, we need to maintain our program. As you can see from the photo on the right-hand side, well, we had to install the glass wall even when we have a workshop or the training. So this actually limits our activities to a great extent. Well, this year, we also provide a lot of contents on YouTube as well as on other online channels. We also have some concern, and we also need to expose the startups that we have supported to the public, but we cannot do that under this situation. Last year, we had a very, very big conference. It was called the Demo Day, which gathered more than 4,900 people. But this year, we had to organize it online. I would believe that this would give some impact, definitely, and the tangible number will be felt next year. But we were very much active in 2018. And we believe that the Demo Day can serve as a big momentum where the investors show keen interest to these the startup companies. So before, it took about the average of the 3.7 months, but now it takes a longer time. It is about the 7.8 months. So this means that the startup companies need to tolerate more to get the investment. Well, this is the global accelerator network. The acronym is GAN or GEN. So we need to build the trust, where we also provide the consultation and the recommendation, and I'd like to share with them. I share them with you. Well, first of all, you need to have very good communication. At the same time, you also need to build the trust or the credibility that is really critical to the startup companies. I'm very sorry to tell you, but we should please conclude it because we're going to have about 10-minute panel discussion session. We had the previous presentation by Lee Pan-gun and Lee Hee-yoon. Previous presenter, the Kim Pan-gun. So I think we also have a chance to talk more about your presentation. So we have two panelists here, Yoo Ji-ho and the Park Jung-hoon. So would you please continue your talk through this panel discussion so that we can have a more productive contents available to the participants. This time, I'd like to invite Yoo Ji-ho for any comments or questions.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to ask questions to Mr. Kim Pan-gun, the first presenter. So in your presentation, you mentioned about early stage. Investment in early stage has sharply decreased, you mentioned, and investors are worried about the COVID-19 situation. In this situation, in fact, your company is making an investment in early stage startups. So probably under these situations, those companies have less chances of survival. So what kind of countermeasures do you take against this situation? So yeah, that is the questions which makes me think a lot about what to do. But I have a little different opinion, and I think that I personally believe that all these stage startups needs to fail soon in early stage. So that is my idea, because there is a big government project to grow the numbers of startups. That there is a massive fund by the government, and there are some projects that I didn't know of. So in this process, the so-called zombie startups are created. The incompetitive startups, they need to fail in the early stages. In case of the United States, if I'm not able to pay my employees, I just go into Chapter 11. But that's not the case in Korea, and even without paying, sometimes because of the situations, without paying wages for employees, the startups in Korea, they say just let's wait 1 more month or two more months. So that is the situation of Korea. I would like to ask same questions to two presenters here. And from this morning, we are talking about the post-COVID-19 situation. But when I just think about the topic that we're dealing with today, there were talkings that there would be many business opportunities, but sometimes I would say no, sometimes I would say yes. Many business opportunities there could be, but from the perspective of investment, what is clear is that the scale or the amount of investment is on the decrease. And I could see that in the graphs and statistics presented by presenters during this session and also in the previous session. and the economy is getting sluggish and resulting in less funding. And in line with the new context, I believe that investors as well, they need to adjust their business models, and that kind of adaptation preparation needs to happen. So regarding that, I wonder, for example, if Mr. Kim, your company is also preparing for such a change. So you mostly are investing in early stage startups, but will you just stick to the previous policy, or will you take the different policy, for example, narrowing down possible startups and give investment in a concentrated number of startups? What is your future direction? Yeah, maybe we can get answer from the second presenter, Ms. Hyun Lee.
Well, thank you very much for the comment and the question. I know that we have a previous presentation, and I partly echo what was said in the previous presentation. But sometimes we talk with investors, and then we also see the application of the law of the jungle even in this investment setting. So sometimes if you have some fund, then instead of using that or infusing that fund into the new project, we'd rather give a chance of using that fund into the existing the project, which had a higher potential. So sometimes you need to determine where the fund should be utilized. So this is the pattern that we notice these days. Well, I know in case of the Emmanuel trip, they had a very successful case of securing very huge investment. And on our part, especially in the initial stage, we want to make a diverse investment into several companies, but at the same time, we can have a follow-up investment to those companies who have a more potential for success in the market. And again, we also cannot overlook the need of the untapped technology because of the this COVID-19 crisis, because there'll be more demand on this uncontact business or the solutions. So I think our investment also will be moving toward that area. And I'd like to touch a little bit upon the consumer market. There might be some industry or the markets where they have some benefit. But overall, I would say that the most of the consumers really are in a dire need. So maybe they are less willing or they are more reluctant in paying attention to the new investment. So again, in terms of the investment, I believe that we need to be more cautious.
Yes, in a word, the market is going toward the kind of situations where the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer. And initial investment is made on certain startups. For example, a seed investment is made to 10 startups, and out of 10, 3 or 4 good performing startups are selected. So the next round of investment is going to those 3 and 4 companies out of 10. So that's the way we are working on. And for good startups, investment is going a lot. And for non-performing startups, they are getting less and they're getting no investment. And that's the way that we will see in the future more. Thank you. And the two presenters talked about the Korean environment. So SparkUp and Mirae Holding companies. How do you see the investment in overseas markets? under this COVID-19 pandemic situation. And could you tell us about investment in overseas market?
Yes. This year we also had some offers of, in the investment this year. But in terms of the number, I think it still remained the same. But we had some difficulties in terms of the communication, because we also have legal issues. And especially, let me give one example of the company in Vietnam. Well, they have public companies, and then they have a shift, and because their working hours also got reduced. And we already completed the due diligence, and we prepared everything. However, unfortunately, the document process as well as the registration, the series of the work had been delayed because of the shortening of the working hour in the Vietnam. Well, we actually had a chance to meet each other last year, especially the companies that we decided to make investment. But now we have to convert our contact into the uncount, the virtual. So sometimes you feel very much hesitant, especially when you make an investment and you really want to see the person in physically or in person. But because basically, people are very much conservative, especially when you make investment into the foreign market. So we rather boost or encourage the follow-up investment at this stage.
And we have invested in some American companies. There were some companies in the seed stage. And however, they are reaching the situations where the pre-seed stage companies are not able to get a lot of the Series A investment. So there are many lockdowns in America, so the civil servants are not able to work. And for example, in Boston, and related administrative work is not proceeded. So overall, investing in America is a bit more tougher than investing in Korea under the current situation. So many companies actually they are investing mainly for the existing unicorn companies. So investing in overseas market at the moment is tougher than before. So that could be interpreted, I guess, that so the companies in Korea probably they have less opportunities to receive investment from overseas investors, I guess. So maybe if we have time, it will be great to have a discussion on this topic later. So I'd like to move on to the next speaker. This is the opportunity to hear about the venture capital status of Luxembourg. Let me invite the next speaker, Ms. Uni Kim. Hello, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Uni Kim from the Luxembourg. And this is such a great opportunity for me to introduce Luxembourg. And I always, start my presentations by asking questions. However, there are not that many audiences here, so let me go into the presentation right away. And I'd like to first touch upon Luxembourg first. And you may be curious about Luxembourg, so let me make a brief introduction of Luxembourg. So by the time that I finish my presentation, I hope that you can remember 5 elements, 5 points regarding Luxembourg. First, Luxembourg is the center of Europe. Should I operate this pointer? Sorry. It doesn't work. The Luxembourg is at the center of Europe. So if I make an analogy between a human body to countries, I would say that Luxembourg is the heart of Europe. So the Luxembourg is in between France, Belgium, and Germany. And just by plane, by train, it takes just 1 to 2 hours to other major cities in Europe. So geographically, we are at a strategic positions. Second point is that Luxembourg does not discriminate against foreigners. Luxembourg population is 620,000, and about half of the population are foreigners. So there are many foreigners working and living in Luxembourg, and when it comes to labor force, between 70 and 75% labor force are foreigners. Why? As I mentioned before, we are in between France, Belgium, and Germany, so there are many commuters from other countries. So without foreign workers, we cannot talk about the economy of Luxembourg. That's why there are same treatments toward foreigners in terms of welfare benefits and business opportunities. And third point is that Luxembourg, it has a lot of people who speak multiple languages. Usually, once you graduate a public school in Luxembourg, you would be able to speak 4 languages: Luxembourg language, German, French, and English. There are many foreigners in the community, so sometimes you can find people in Luxembourg who can speak up to 6 or 7 languages. This is such an important element. So do you know how many countries are in EU? No, with the Brexit, now there are 27 countries in the EU. And how many official languages are there in Europe? Do you know? There are 24 official languages in Europe. So in the European market, if you want to do business in Europe, actually, Luxembourg is the right place because Luxembourg has many people who can speak different languages. And the Luxembourg, and the fourth point is that Luxembourg is a stable country. So Luxembourg is stable and predictive, and politically and socially and financially, Luxembourg is stable and predictable. And when you take a look at the GDP growth over the last 2 to 3 years, the GDP of Luxembourg is above the average of EU. So we are maintaining between 2 to 3% growth. And also the employment rate is on the increase. And in the ever-changing environment concerning the fourth industrial revolution, Luxembourg is also putting a focus on smart economy, which is based on data. So the Luxembourg is looking for outstanding workforce. So the Luxembourg welcomes outstanding talents. And there is no discrimination against foreigners, as I mentioned. The same treatment, including the welfare benefits, is given to foreigners. So it is such a good country for foreigners to work. And while doing business in Luxembourg, you will enjoy many benefits. For example, social security cost is much less. So if you are hiring one employee, actually you are taking the less burden concerning the social security cost for that employee. And also taxes are much less compared to the other European countries. And so you get more from your revenue in Luxembourg. So what kind of companies are in Luxembourg? Multinational companies such as Amazon, with more than 20 million employees in Luxembourg, and Microsoft as well. And the #1 steel company, where is it? Yes, it's in Luxembourg. And Ferrero, the chocolate company, it is the Italian company. However, they have their European headquarters in Luxembourg. What about Korean companies? Yes, there are Korean companies in Luxembourg. And the first Korean manufacturer in entering Luxembourg is the Samon Steel and also Hyosung as well. So, and tire company and the Tusan Solus, these Korean companies are producing electric cells. And so the sales and R&D activities are taking place in Luxembourg. So what about the fifth point? Last but not least, Luxembourg is the IT hub. And just like Korea, the steel industry and the agriculture industries were the basis for the economy for Luxembourg. So as the economy grew, they reduced the taxes and they began to grow the financial industry, and now their strength is in the financial and IT sectors. So the Luxembourg government is giving a lot of support for the IT industry, especially startups. So there is a good ecosystem for startups. In relation to Luxembourg startups, I would like to explain what kind of program Luxembourg has a little later on. And over the last 5 years, Luxembourg IT, AI, cybersecurity related companies, related startups became many in numbers. Luxembourg, in fact, is a latecomer to the IT industry. That's why the Luxembourg government gave a lot of investment to the IT infrastructure. So what Luxembourg is good at is the fast internet speed. Among European countries, Luxembourg has the fastest internet connection speed. So this is the result of the survey. It is the 3.5 the seconds and up to 8 seconds per 8 meter seconds per. It is really fast in terms of the internet speed compared to the other European major cities. And in the Luxembourg, Tier 4 grade data centers are located in Luxembourg. So 40% of the data centers are located in Luxembourg. And these data centers have high level of security. For example, the country called Estonia, they are keeping national confidential information and data in one of the Tier 4 grade data centers located in Luxembourg. These days we're talking about data economy, so the Luxembourg is really good at data storage and data security. And the Luxembourg, across the European country, is looking for establishing the high-performance computing centers, HPCC. So the computer engineers from all the countries on the European country are coming to Luxembourg. So the cyber security environment is well in place. So if you are looking for any business opportunities, you can think about the area. And the Luxembourg is well known as a good test bed. There are many good research institutes in Luxembourg in collaboration with universities. And these research institutes are working on research for autonomous vehicles, IoTs, biomaterials, and the materials and the environment. So in these areas, they are conducting a co-research with many parties around the world. So if you are interested in having a partnership with research institutes in Luxembourg, it would be good. So there is the funding program, Euro 2020. So if you do a partnership with the research institutes in Luxembourg, you can apply for the funding project as well. The last one that I want to talk about Luxembourg is that we have a cross-border autonomous vehicle test bed. Now, autonomous vehicle is supposed to be tested in freeways, but as you know, Luxembourg is in between Germany, France, and other countries. But for the road testing, you need to have many elements in the journey. So for the testing, so along with the governments of Germany and France, Luxembourg has the test bed for the autonomous vehicle. So that's that encompasses different cross-borders. And that was the overview of Luxembourg. From now on, I'd like to talk about what kind of changes are being made after COVID-19. So Luxembourg as well was affected by COVID-19, and the Luxembourg was one of the most hit countries when we take a look at the number of population, and we hit the peak of COVID-19 cases from mid-March, and there were many lockdowns. In the initial stages of the outbreak, the Luxembourg made a lot of effort to receive the supplies of the drugs and the medical supplies related to COVID-19, and also they got supplied from Korea as well. But with the release of the lockdown, people began to party, so we hit another peak in July. So Luxembourg, after that, began to test all the public. So by doing the test, they identified confirmed cases, and now actually Luxembourg is in a pretty stable period because with the number of confirmed cases is within the range of 50. So now when it comes to COVID-19 response, Luxembourg is in a stable situation. Around the world, countries around the world are trying to boost their economic recovery, and the same goes to Luxembourg. The Luxembourg government, they supported 8 billion euro for boosting the economy. So 8.8 billion euro, that is equivalent to 10 trillion won. And Korea ranks 9th in terms of GDP. But the Luxembourg's GDP is just 1/20th of that of Korea. However, they are investing 40% of the GDP to help companies. So they are giving that kind of financial assistance to companies so that the companies can maintain their employment for their employees. So the government is giving financial assistance for 80% of the employees' salaries. And they are also encouraging people to make investments. And so these are the benefits given to companies located in Luxembourg. So let me skip this part. And Luxembourg is well known for a startup country. So they are putting a focus on helping startups. So in the COVID-19 pandemic situations, the Luxembourg government actually put more energy on giving support for startups. So about 300 companies, they applied for the government program. So out of the 300 applicants, 15 companies were picked. So they received almost 200 million won in Korean won as financial assistance by the government. So you have just 1 minute left. Yes, understood. So we have a startup competition. This is, we have an ICT event. So every year we hold this event, ICT Spring. This is a tech conference. And I'd like to invite you all, if you are interested in this event, you can come because for about 4 months, you can get coaching by experts. And after the 4 months training, you can do IR to companies, the other companies. And once you become the winner, you are assisted financially because you are able to get the amount for your business. And this is just the right program for startups. And I'd like to talk about the big important the event. So hybrid type virtual booths will be created for the conference ICT Spring, and all the lectures will be given to audiences through webinars. So the space, aerospace, and AI and cybersecurities. So all the important topics will be talked about by experts and lecturers. And there is one more thing, startup competition. So I hope that many Korean companies can participate in this event. So if you contact me, I will guide you to participate in that event for free. So please contact me. And that's the end of my presentation. So I have more materials to show you. So please refer to the presentation file. And if you are interested in Luxembourg, please contact me and or my organization. So I have contact email numbers and the phone numbers at the last slide of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. This time, one of the panelists, Mr. Yu, will ask some questions regarding the Luxembourg. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Well, I know that Luxembourg is very well positioned in terms of the tax system, so I think it's extremely encompassing for the startup companies. You introduced the acceleration program, and then you said more than 300 companies actually applied for that. I'd like to understand if any of the companies are from Asia or not. Do you have any success case, or because I'd like to know if any of the Korean companies can leverage this program. Well, first regarding the startup, regarding the COVID-19.
The Fit for Start is about health tech startup support program. So for that program, 10 Korean startups applied for the program. So there were, of course, other startups who applied for the program. But in case of Korea, 10 startups made an application. So from Korea, there is a lot of application. But as I mentioned before, Luxembourg does not discriminate foreigners. But the first criteria is technological prowess. So the technology is an important criteria. So any good startup company, if they have a good technology, they can be assisted financially. But so far, there are many Korean good startups who went to the final competitions. However, they ultimately failed. But I want to express some thoughts for startups. They are definitely actually the Korean company who failed in the final stage. They were good companies. However, I would say that you need to know how to make yourself look good. So that's one of the important elements as well. So I really hope that actually taking this opportunity, more Korean companies can advance into Europe through Luxembourg. So I'd like to introduce to you the next speaker from Finland. So the next speaker is Mr. Teppo Heiskanen.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for waiting for long.
No problem. Glad to be here.
테포 헤이스카네는 핀란드의 아이토 대학교에서 지금
Well, I know that he's from the Aalto University of Finland, and he'll be talking about the venture companies in the Finland.
Yes, thank you. 안녕하세요. Hello from Finland. Very happy to be here. Very privileged to be here in this conference. I will start my presentation here, and I hope. Is it visible?
Not yet, but it will come soon. The slide. Yeah, it's ready.
Okay. So, good morning to Korea. I'm happy to be here, and I will be speaking a bit about how COVID-19 has been affecting universities and industries in Finland. I work with corporate relations at Aalto University in Finland, and just to give you a short background, I'll show a few slides about our university. We were created in 2010 as a merger of three leading universities at the time in Finland, the Helsinki University of Technology, the Helsinki School of Economics, and the University of Art and Design. And the idea was, and still is, to create innovation in that middle space which exists at the center of our three disciplines. And the university charter, the document which was commissioned by the government at the time, actually states that we have a national mission to strengthen Finland's innovative capacity. So this is a central theme in everything we do. What does that mean in practice? Do we actually walk the talk? In this photo, you can see the First Lady, the wife of our president, in the annual Independence Day celebration of 2018. And she's wearing a dress which is made of wood, actually birch wood fiber. And to be more specific, the birchwood fiber was broken down into its basic elements, and the fibers were rebuilt into a material which can be used to make textile. And this process was developed at Aalto University, and it's called iron cell. In other words, we can take a piece of wood, we can actually take old clothing, old jeans, for example, or we can even take old newspapers, break it down to fibers, and make it into textile. Now, why is this important? Because, as you may know, the textile industry is very burdensome on the environment. And what is happening in the world now is that the entire industry is looking for alternative solutions. So our solution is one of those possible solutions. Now, that would be innovation in itself, but we didn't stop there. The dress you see has then been designed by our art and design students. And this is an example of the kind of innovation we are looking for. Our chemical engineers were able to create the process, and our art students were able to take it from there and put it into something which can be worn by the First Lady on Independence Day. So we are celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. Our campus has grown into a world-class collaboration hub, and we are one of the most international universities in Europe. 40% of our academic staff comes from outside Finland. In our new strategy, we have three cross-cutting themes. Solutions for sustainability, which I referred to in the dress example, radical creativity, and an entrepreneurial mindset. I'll be returning to these points later in the presentation, but these are the kind of issues that we as a university as a whole want to be upholding and at the forefront of the way we think and approach the various challenges that the world brings to us. Coming to entrepreneurship, startups. About 100 companies are founded every year in our ecosystem. The ecosystem means the cluster of companies and activities on our campus and around our university, which means that half of all Finnish startups originate in our community. Entrepreneurship as a career option for students is growing rapidly, and over 3,000 students have already completed the Aalto Ventures program, which is a program open to all our students. And here you have various logos of the different aspects of our entrepreneurship ecosystem. So the Ventures program, we have something called the Aalto University Startup Center, which again is located in a building called the ENG, which is an accelerator, also housing, for example, the European Space Agency office and the United Nations Technology Innovation Lab for Europe. They have one on each continent, so the one for Europe is at our campus. And if you look at the last logo, Slush, you may recognize that that is the huge startup event which takes place in Helsinki every year. Actually, it should be taking place next month or in November this year, but unfortunately because of COVID-19, it has been cancelled. Slush originated on our campus as well. It used to be held actually on our campus until it grew so big that it has been moved to other premises. And of course we hope that next year it will be taking place normally. So, how did COVID-19 hit Finland? You have some of the figures here, and these are a bit, well, a little over a week old, but the trend is about the same. But if you look at the chart on the right, basically you can see that we did much worse than South Korea, but on a European level, we have been doing quite well and still are. Actually, right now, we are probably one of the safest countries to travel to in Europe and in the whole world. So we're glad about that. But of course, the fight is not over. There are many ways of looking at numbers, so I just picked a few, and you get the big picture here. The GDP figures, again, on a European level, we are doing quite well. Now, having said that, the understanding now is that the worst is still to come. Finnish industry will react a bit later than maybe in some other countries, and we will see some very tough times in front of us. If you look at the chart to the right, you can see the change in the number of unemployed and furloughed, in other words, temporarily laid off. This year, the red ones, and compared to last year, the blue ones. So there is a significant change, especially in manufacturing, trade, and then the hotel and restaurant industry. But the other ones as well, so it is a hit, like we know from other countries in the world. Now, what were the responses then? I collected some of them here, governmental companies and universities, what has been happening. It's not very different from what happened in other countries. The Finnish lockdowns were quite strict. Actually, the capital region, Helsinki, was isolated from the rest of the country for a few weeks in the spring. In other words, well, I happen to live in a small town which is 100 kilometers from Helsinki, and I couldn't go there for about 2 weeks. So the police was checking every vehicle on the highway and so forth. And this was because the virus situation in Helsinki was so much worse than the rest of the country. But that is over now, and many of the travel restrictions are also over. And we finally have the mobile application to track the virus. And I'm very embarrassed to say that we got the mobile only a few weeks ago, compared to how fast South Korea was able to put that together. It's quite embarrassing. The companies, maybe one issue is that the industry never shut down completely. it has slowed down, but it has been working all the time, so that's maybe one of the reasons that the figures are so good as they are still now. And when
Teppo,
it comes to... Yes.
you have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I had 20 minutes for the presentation. So, I will skip to some of the last slides then. One of the outcomes of the positive outcomes of the virus was that solutions started to spring up. So here is a news item of a Finnish startup which has developed a way of doing the tests faster, and the other news item is from our researchers. It's a project where they put together a model on how the virus spreads in a contained environment. In other words, if somebody sneezes or coughs in a supermarket, what happens after that? So you can watch the video later if you like. And this is my last slide. Where are we now? These are the kind of questions we are asking. How to deal with the response fatigue. People are tired not only of the virus, but of how to respond to that. And that means that there's a danger of laxing the precautions. We are clearly moving from questions of medical research and into economics and sociology of the situation. The innovation scene has to move into a more agile mode. It has to be able to react faster and to rethink collaboration across borders. The future of work arrived early, I wrote, and this means that the solutions that we have been looking for in how we work remotely and or face-to-face in a hybrid mode, we will never be going back to the old way of doing things. This is a permanent change. And then if you look at the university and industry cooperation, the true partnerships will remain, but they will transform into something new which nobody really knows what it looks like. So in addressing all this, I think we are looking into our basic value of radical creativity. So thank you. That was my contributions this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have a question for you, especially from Dr. Park Jong-bong from ETRI, who has had extensive experience with this kind of like the startup. So, Dr. Park?
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Actually, I have 3 questions, and first 2 questions are very simple. So, after I hear your answers, I will raise a third questions. Okay, first question is regarding the number of startups. You mentioned about 70 to 100, startups founded every year. Is it, in Aalto University only, or Finland nationwide, numbers?
These are only for Aalto University.
Aalto University.
So yes, the national number would be about twice that much.
Yeah, it's quite big numbers. It surprised me. And second question is, who are they? Are they young generation, like a university or a graduate student, or middle-aged or retired people? Who are they?
Well, I think they are quite young. A lot of them are actually are students who might be moving into a startup phase even before they graduate, which is a bit of a problem for us at the university, but fine for the country and then economically. So yes, it's very young. I mean, of course, there are other generations there as well, but But if you walk into A-Grid, our accelerator building, I think you will find that the average age is around 20 or something.
Yeah, it's quite similar, very similar to the Korean situations. And my third question is regarding your last comment. You mentioned that rethinking uncertainty into radical creativity. Yes. So I just wonder, you expecting the increase of the number of startups or entrepreneurs post-COVID-19, or decrease the number of the startups and entrepreneurships? I just wanted to hear your expectation. Yeah.
That's a very good question, and I don't have any data on this, but my hunch, if I try to interpret the kind of discussion in society, is that yes, we will see an increase in the number of startups. The job market, the traditional job market of applying for a job in a big company is very congested. I mean, as a university, I'm hiring somebody now, and I have over 200 applications, which is a huge amount in the Finnish context. So even the simple situation of it being even more difficult to find a traditional job right now, so that would be pushing people into new kind of thinking and into new kind of startups. So yes, I think we will see an increase.
Okay, thank you for your participation from Alto, and I hope you can enjoy your breakfast now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
very kind of you.
Switching to Korean now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. 네, 저희가 오늘 두 번째 날 GCCW에서 어떻게 스타트업들이
And during the sessions, how startups in the United States, Europe, and Korea are responding to COVID-19 pandemic, and how investors are making decisions for their investment are being discussed. So now that we had discussions, it strikes me thinking that in terms of investment, there is no particular or sharp decrease in investment, but probably if the COVID-19 pandemic goes on until next year, maybe we will see a decrease probably in the investment starting from next year. So up until this year, at this point, actually there were face-to-face the meetings, even though they are small in numbers. However, but that there was a kind of channel for startups to receive the investment. However, we need to wait and see what will happen next year. So we had speakers from the United States, and we had a speaker from Finland, and we had speakers from Korea. So I'd like to thank all the speakers for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us in this session. And also my thanks go to all the audiences online. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insightful discussion, panelists. It is our hope that other regions around the world will pick from the experience shared today with respect to the new realities as it concerns startups, investments, and industrial environments post-COVID-19. Once again, I'd like to thank our online participants for your contribution so far, and use this opportunity to also inform you that we shall be proceeding on a lunch break now, and to return here by 2 p.m. to discuss convergence of ICT technologies in the Green New Deal. Please stay tuned and enjoy your lunch.